Our energy costs are way down. Our groceries are way down. Everything is way down.
Grocery prices remain high.
Announced corporate job cuts, Andrew, in the U.S. surging past 1 million so far this year, with 153,000 new layoffs announced just in October, according to Challenger. That is the worst October since 2003.
So while the headlines are about mass layoffs across the country, the real story is about the erosion of trust. The once trusted Mr. Art of the Deal is completely losing ground with his own supporters on the very thing that they elected him to, in their words, fix the economy. The new data has emerged showing that the US experienced its highest number of layoffs in more than 2 decades.
This as a new poll finds about 70% of Americans say groceries are more expensive now than they were a year ago. And about 60% of them are blaming President Trump.
But when you look at 25% reduction in costs for Thanksgiving between Biden and me, meaning this administration, that's a tremendous number. It's the biggest reduction in costs in the history of that chart or whatever it is they do. They do a synopsis of everything. They cover every element of Thanksgiving meals. 25% down. So I don't want to hear about the affordability, because right now we're much less. If you look at energy, we're getting close to $2 a gallon gasoline.
According to Challenger Gray, in Christmas, over 153,000 job cuts occurred in October alone, the worst October since 2003. And more than 1.1 million jobs have been cut this year.
It's about the health of the job market. Steve Leisman joins us with the latest numbers from Challenger on job cuts. What's going on?
Yeah, well, this is like a clue from like a cough or a sneeze or whatever. But announced corporate job cuts, Andrew, in the U.S. surging past 1 million so far this year, with 153,000 new layoffs announced just in October, according to Challenger. That is the worst October since 2003. Here are the numbers. October up 153. That compares with September. That's 100,000 more than September and 100,000 more than this time last year in October 2024. Andy Challenger commenting, some industries are correcting after the hiring boom of the pandemic, but this comes as AI adoption, softening consumer and corporate spending, and rising costs drive belt tightening and hiring freezes. Announced layoffs don't always lead to actual cuts and could take place from attrition. But the report puts in perspective what we've been reporting here day after day, week after week. Series of marquee announcements unveiled in recent weeks across U.S. industries, including UPS, Amazon, Target, among others, Paramount, Rivian, all these companies there. Government has been responsible year to date for 308,000. But look at that, tech 141. That could be where you see a lot of the AI, maybe some in warehousing, but a big chunk of that's going to be UPS, as well as potentially some hit from reduced flows of trade. Retail's up there, as is services at 64,000. You take out the Doge cuts, the number's a bit better at 800,000, but still well above last year. Challenger doesn't see much in the way of hiring, saying announced plans are 35% below last year, and they're skeptical about the number of new hires for the holiday season.
At the same time, President Trump keeps insisting that the nation has, quote, the greatest economy ever, even as the ground shifts beneath working Americans. Keep in mind, this is the same person who, in a matter of 24 hours, went from Democrats did well in the election because of affordability and Republicans don't talk about it enough, to then, I don't want to hear about the affordability thing. Whiplash, huh? I don't blame you.
You know, they have this new word called affordability, and they don't talk about it enough. The Democrats did.
It's the biggest reduction in cost in the history of that chart or whatever it is they do. They do a synopsis of everything. They cover every element of Thanksgiving meals. 25% down. So I don't want to hear about the affordability.
When conservative leading CNBC are running segments like this, calling the job cut surge as a flashing red warning light for the US economy, you know it's pretty grim out there. This is a network that often cheers Trump-era growth, and they are now acknowledging this slowdown across retail, tech, and logistics. And on the political right, even Marjorie Taylor Greene conceded on social media that her words were, quote, Americans are hurting and that people can't keep up, completely contradicting Trump's claim that prices are down when, yeah, they're not.
When the president says there's virtually no inflation and that grocery prices are going down, do you agree with him on that?
No, I go to the grocery store myself. Grocery prices remain high. Energy prices are high. My electricity bills are higher here in Washington, D.C. at my apartment And they're also higher at my house in Rome, Georgia, higher than they were a year ago. So affordability is a problem. And I'm a mom. My kids are 22, 26, and 28. That's the generation I worry about the most. And they're having a very hard time. But when I go back home and I talk to many of my constituents, I'm hearing stories of not only are we having a really hard time affording groceries and rent and things like that, but I'm also hearing stories about people maxing out their credit cards just to afford their monthly expenses.
So when the president says...
And this contradiction is the main issue, right? That people don't trust Donald Trump. How they ever did, well, that's another story which we won't get into at this moment. But the economy, well, it isn't just a policy measure, right? It's the central story voters tell themselves. And when people feel insecure about their jobs and income, they don't just get anxious, they vote.
So I've had just as many voters, Anna, say to me that they feel that this is a moment where they can register concern and frustration with the Trump administration. I will tell you also, as we've been out here all day, you've of course got Democratic canvassers, got Republican canvassers across from them. A lot of foot traffic here. I actually just got an update from one of the election officials inside who say that at around this time just a year ago, so in a presidential general election year, they saw slightly less traffic than they're seeing today. This traffic greater than what it was in a presidential year, sort of speaking to potentially some of the excitement that you're seeing in an area that is a Democratic stronghold. Larry knows this so well, and the kind of place that Spanberger and the rest of the Democratic ticket are going to have to drive up their turnout, drive up their vote if they want to continue to bear out what the polls have shown, which is that this really is maybe Spanberger's race to lose.
A recent Newsweek poll found that only 34% of Americans approve of Trump's handling of inflation and cost of living, while 62% disapprove. Another national survey shows that his overall approval is just at 37%, with nearly 7 in 10 saying the country is headed in the wrong direction.
The approval rating right now, John, sits at 37%. That is a low mark in this term for Donald Trump. His disapproval is at 63%. That's a high mark for his entire time as president, first and second term combined. I will say Democrats and independents fleeing him, of course, Republicans still with him, which is why we'll see him doing these tele-rallies tonight for the Republican candidates for governor. Take a look over the course of this year. You'll see down here, mid-February, late February, he was at 47-48% approval. That was a honeymoon period after the election. He's now been steadily going down all year long. Why? One of the reasons why it seems is that the American people think he's gone too far when using presidential power. 61% say so, way up from February. And deporting undocumented immigrants, 57% of Americans in this poll, John, say that he has gone too far in doing that. And in fact, he said just the opposite on 60 Minutes last night.
You know, David, a great man, called this poll sort of a mood ring for the country. And it does seem that voters are saying they're in a pretty bad mood.
They are. It's a pretty sour American electorate out there. 32% of Americans say things are going well in the country, John. 68% say they're going badly. This is clearly driven in large part by the economy, which is by far and away the most important issue for Americans. 47% say economy, cost of living, top issue. 26% say state of democracy. 10% say immigration. 7%, crime and safety. And so what does that mean in terms of Trump's policies affecting the U.S. economy? Well, 61% of Americans say they've worsened the American economy. Only 27% say Trump's policies have improved the economy, John.
So what's left when the businessman tanks the business? Well, good old-fashioned bigotry, of course. But even that brand of Republican politics did absolutely nothing in the recent election.
That's a unique Democratic.
That's not what Abigail Spanberger's saying.
That's what Zora Mamdani said, who endorsed Mikey Sherrill. She didn't disown me.
You guys want to talk about Mamdani, and I get why. He's charismatic and he's super left. Democrats won in Mississippi, Ohio, Virginia, New Jersey, red parts of those states with moderates. And if Republicans don't want to admit that today, they're going to be in for a rude awakening next year. That's all I'm saying. I think
which means, yeah, the tide is turning.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.